if you just arrived, I'm sorry, and you would like to, we're writing very quickly for 4 minutes on this writing prompt, okay? If you have a pen, feel free to do, okay? All right? What is one thing they can improve? Remember, you're only looking for one thing. You're not correcting the paper, just one thing. One thing generally, one specific thing, just one, okay? Oh. Give it a check and tell them to come and help us teach next time. Okay, I'd like you to give the paper back to the person who wrote it, okay? If you did not get to explain all of your comments, no problem. Remember, we just wanted to focus on one. We just wanted you to warm up to the idea of kind of what we'll be doing. We are going to return to using these, so please do not throw it away. Please keep it for a few activities later. We're going to return to your writing and begin some serious editing and proofreading. Okay? I'm going to hand it off to Jeremy now.
Now, the next thing we want to do is start looking for patterns of error in our own writing. And to do that, we've got a grammar knowledge checklist. So I think all of you have this handout. So find it. It's 2 pages long. And so for the grammar knowledge checklist, there's 2 parts. You can see part A and part B. Part A contains several basic areas of grammar knowledge, just about language in general. And so I want you to consider each of those areas and check whether you feel very confident, somewhat confident, or not confident with that area. Or if you're not sure what it means, some of these descriptions are a little bit grammatical, then you can check not sure what it means, and we can talk about it in a moment. And then after that, we've got part B, and part B has specific errors that can be made in the areas of grammar or mechanics. Mechanics would be like spelling, punctuation, those sorts of things. So check each area and mark whether you feel you frequently struggle with it, sometimes struggle with it, or never struggle with it if it's not a problem, or if you're not sure what it means. And then we can talk about, after you're finished, we'll talk about what some of those areas, those areas are. So take just a couple of minutes and put a check in each next to each item.
Yes? Yeah, so read and then put a check next to the one, however you feel about it, okay? Let's take a look at the first one. No. Just from your own opinion? So, yeah. So, for example, identifying parts of speech of individual words in a sentence. Do you feel very confident about that? Somewhat confident? Not confident? Yes. This is just for you, your own self, not your partner's writing, okay? Your ability. The first way to improve our grammar is to understand our own ability, right? So this is what this checklist is for. It's an honest evaluation about your own ability.
Okay, I see that some of you have already finished. If you're not finished, you can continue to check the list as we discuss some of these items. Looking at part A, the second area of knowledge, identifying the subject and predicate or verb in a clause or sentence. Could I just see a show of hands? How many of you feel very confident identifying the subject and verb in a sentence? Just put your hand up if you feel confident with that. Pretty confident. How many of you feel somewhat confident? Okay, good. And how many don't feel very confident with that? Okay, Good. And how many are not sure what this means? You might not know what it means. So, one of the basic things about writing in English is being able to identify those subjects and verbs and making sure that each clause that you write has one of those. So we'll be looking at some sentence errors a little later that are related to that. How about the bottom one on part A also, the last one, identifying sentence types and how to punctuate them. How many of you feel very confident about punctuating different types of sentences? Putting commas in the correct places or semicolons or other things? Okay. How many feel somewhat confident? All right. And not confident? Okay. All right. Good. Now let's look at some of the common problems. The first one is wordy or awkward sentences. How many of you are not sure what that means? Anybody not sure what that means? Okay, so wordy sentences using too many words. Sometimes if you try to use very technical or academic vocabulary, you can put a little bit too much, and your sentences become unclear because as a result. Now, how about limited vocabulary or repetition? How many of you feel like you frequently struggle with that? So vocabulary, sometimes struggle with that. Or don't struggle with that. Okay, wonderful. Let's look down the list a little bit more. How about commas? How do you know where to put commas when you're writing? How many of you frequently struggle with this one? Sometimes? Okay, not at all, or never? Okay, great. Then we'll just look at a couple more on the second page. Verb tenses. This is an interesting one. How many of you frequently struggle with verb tenses? Choosing which tense? Sometimes or never? Okay, all right. That's often a common area of difficulty. Sentence boundaries is one that we're going to look at a little later. Sentence boundaries, run-on sentences, sentence fragments. How many of you struggle with this one? Feel like you struggle with it? Sometimes struggle with it? Or you feel confident you don't really struggle with this? Okay. All right, good. It's just to give us a little idea of some of the areas where you struggle, so we can look at some of those a little bit later in this workshop. And so now we're going to go on to the editing strategy checklist. And Sultan, I'll hand this one over to you.
Very quickly before we move on, how many people after reading that checklist realized something that they didn't know before about their grammar skills? Okay? What was it? Would you like to share? What was it that you didn't know before? A lot of times these checklists are good for us to examine our own skill level, right? You know, I was sitting here and I was looking at it, and when he said something about commas, I was like, you know, I have trouble with commas too. I almost rose my hand, and then I remembered, oh, wait, I'm giving the workshop. I can't do that. Right? Okay? But this checklist is important for us because this way we know which grammar skills that we'll work on today by the hands that you raised. And also, it's important for you when you give, if you give to your students, or if you are a student and you do a checklist, it's very, very helpful because it is self-assessment for yourself, okay? And it's very, very good, okay? And now, we're going to be looking at strategies, okay, that are good for you when you are doing proofreading or editing, okay? So I want you to look at the last part of this strategy checklist. If you look at the paper here, it says editing strategy checklist, okay? And it's a complete, the strategy checklist. We're going to go over each one together, okay? And what I want you to do and what we're going to discuss after we go over this is which strategies do you think are most useful for you? Remember, this is about you and about improving your proofreading and editing skills. Why? And are there any other proofreading or editing strategies that are not on the list? Okay? So let's begin. Everyone is looking? Okay, I'm going to read the first one. Strategy number 1. Leave time between writing and final editing. Never? Okay. Now, why is this a successful strategy for proofreading or editing? Who can tell me? Can you stand up and tell us your name and get the microphone and give us your answer, please?
Yeah, this is a thing that I've never done, and I think I should have done this. Like, give time. It's like checking 10 answer sheets, essay writing, and I know I have to rest my brain for a while and refresh the mind.
Very important. I like that idea of refreshing the mind and giving your brain a rest. If you were writing your first draft, or writing, and then you stop and say, okay, now I'm going to edit it, the likelihood that you will find your own mistakes is almost impossible.
True. Especially if you're like me and you end up doing your writing late at night until like midnight, 2 in the morning, and you're so tired. There's no way you can find your mistakes.
Exactly. It's very difficult.
Or you find no mistake at all.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know? And so it's good to give time between the time that you write and between the time that you editing. How many people know a famous writer by the name of Stephen King? Do you know Stephen King? Yeah, he likes to write horror, thriller, but he also likes to write all kind of fiction. Do you know how long he waits after he has written his first draft until he goes back and begins rewriting and editing? A month. I think. That's what I read. So I could be wrong. So he writes his first draft, and then he puts it away for 1 month, and he starts writing something else. And then when he comes back to it after a month, his mind is fresh, like she said, and he is ready to look at it like it is a new piece of art, like it is a new book that he is writing, and he can do his best editing. Now, after he does his editing, does that mean that it's finished? No. What did we talk about in the beginning of this workshop? Good proofreading is not only you proofreading, but it is having others, okay? If you get one thing from this workshop, I want you to be brave enough to know that you need more and more people to read your work, to proofread it. The more eyes that you have, the better it is going to be, okay? Don't be shy. Hey, would you please read my work? Oh, it's not really that good. I'm sorry, no. No. Say, hello, I'm writing some research. I really respect your opinion. Would you mind reading it and giving me some feedback? And if you have time, proofreading it? Of course they will. And they'll feel honored. And after this workshop, somebody is going to ask you, probably. Okay? Let's look at the next one. Read the paper aloud. So this is a strategy for proofreading or editing, is to read the paper aloud. Now that's very difficult in Indonesia because sometimes Skripsi is 100, 200 pages, right? Woo! You reading aloud for 1 month. You're like, oh, okay? But it is a very successful editing strategy. Why? Who can tell me why? Anyone? Raise your hand, please. Okay, stand up. Please tell us your name. Yes, please. And tell us your name.
My name is Tina. In my opinion, if we read our essay a lot, we can talk to ourselves, and sometimes we can find the gap between its sentence, maybe it's awkward connections. Sometimes I feel like that.
Very true. A lot of times, what is happening inside our brain and what we are writing on the paper is not the same. But we think it's the same when we finish. We say, oh, wow, this is perfect. And we put it away, right? No. If we read it aloud, we are more likely to find our mistakes because we are using more than just one skill. We are reading, speaking skill. We are listening, right? And so it allows us to it makes it easier to sometimes catch some mistakes, okay? Are you going to catch all of them? No. So what do you need to do after you read it aloud? Ask somebody to proofread also, okay? Don't be shy again. I already told you that what you need to do, okay? The next one. Focus on specific known areas of weakness. Always do, sometimes do, never do. Sometimes. What does that mean? Focus on specific known areas of weakness. Anyone have an idea? Good. So if you know, like she said, that you have a problem with prepositions, then that means you need to focus on editing for prepositions. You should set aside specific time just for focusing on the skill that you are weak with. Do you understand? If she says that she is not good with prepositions, then she should read one whole time only checking for mistakes with preposition. If she sees other things, good. But her focus should be just on prepositions. And then what should she do after? Good. Find somebody to proofread. Of course. That's always the case. Okay? And Jeremy is more than happy to accept your scriptsies and do the proofreading. Okay?
I have lots of free time.
Yeah,
so.
no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, good. Okay? So, one of the things, I also have weaknesses in my writing. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but I have books about grammar. I have books on vocabulary. And whenever I am struggling with a certain part of editing or writing, I use and I focus on this by studying, finding examples, and putting it into practice in my writing. Okay? Does everyone understand? Raise your hand if you know the famous writer. His name is Ernest Hemingway. Do you know? Yeah. Do you know that his grammar was terrible? In fact, if his grammar was so bad that if I showed it to you, maybe you will think that he was in 3rd grade. Maybe that's too much, but yeah, his grammar was very bad. And he had an editor who used to work very diligently to fix his grammar. The editor's job was only to fix his grammar. Does that mean that his writing is bad? No, he's one of the greatest writers in the world, right? But he had trouble with grammar, okay? So just because you have problems with grammar does not mean that your ideas are not important, that your voice does not need to be heard. It does not mean that, okay? Good. What did Ernest Hemingway do? He gave it to somebody else to proofread, okay? Good. Next one. Use online resources to check for errors or research language choices. How many people always do this? Good, okay. How many people sometimes do this? Good. Never? Oh, okay. Especially nowadays, there's so many resources online that you can take advantage of, okay? And it's a lot easier than carrying a lot of books on your backpack. You get on the ojak and the motorcycle goes up like this, you know? Yeah, you can just carry your computer and you have a lot of resources with you, okay? Using word processing software to check for errors. That's always, yeah. Microsoft Word, right? When you use that, you can do spell check. Yes. I love spell check. Yeah. When I finish my first draft, everything has a green line under it, you know, the red mark, because I made a mistake in spelling. Spelling in English is very difficult. Yeah, a lot of things sound different than the way they're spelled, and so you need this software, okay? And then after you print it out on Microsoft Word, what do? Yeah, you give someone to proofread, okay? There's a lot of ways that you can use technology to share your paper now. Me and Jeremy, we made this presentation by using technology, Google Drive. He made a change, I made a change. It was very easy. I did not write on paper, fold it, and put it in the mail. After 1 week, he sends it back. No, we were able to use technology, okay? And the last one, ask someone else to proofread or edit. How many people always do this? Okay, good. After this workshop, how many people are always going to do this? Good. I hope that everyone will do, okay?